All right, we're live. So, for the audience that does not know you, feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Bob, uh, and I was at CA for 15 years. I left in 2021. Prior to that, I was managing a counterterrorism program for the Defense Department as a civilian. And prior to that, I was a special operator in the military for the better part of a decade. And that's my background.
Okay, so we were just having a conversation about Snowden, and I was going to say that yesterday I had a conversation with a guy named Bobby Chacon who worked for the FBI, and I asked him. We had this whole conversation about surveillance, right? It's not uploaded yet, but when it is, it'll be. It's cool. It's a good conversation with him, and I said to him, a pretty fair question, which is that if the NSA keeps records of almost everything that everybody does, technologically speaking, why can't the FBI in certain cases just subpoena the NSA for those records? And he gave a very interesting answer that I wasn't really expecting, which was that if that the FBI, if they are to obtain evidence, they cannot obtain it illegally. And if they obtain it illegally, then they'll get ripped apart in court and their case will fall apart. And it'll be considered fruits of the poisonous tree because they obtained evidence illegally. So I was thinking about this today and how it's interesting that one government agency is keeping records and then another agency is not allowed to use those records. How it's really only meant for one or for people in the intelligence community. And how even though they exist, they cannot be subpoenaed. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that, where let's say FBI has an investigation on subject X, and that subject has to be happens to be a CA officer, or no, just happens to be a U.S. citizen, and at the same time, the CA is looking at that person or running that person as an asset. So this person, let's say it's a dual Pakistani, dual U.S. citizen. Well, where does FISA come in on that? Can you or can you not? Can DOJ obtain a FISA warrant to tap this guy's phone? Can they get a Title III? Can they take a look at this guy because or girl because they're a U.S. cit, but they might have ties to terrorists? Federal judges in a circuit court are typically very reluctant to give those, and DOJ is typically very reluctant to go after those because of this. If they identify this individual, they're going to have a dialogue with CIA in order to get CIA to declassify for prosecutorial purposes. And those two teams don't play well together. For me, again, I've never taken an oath to the United States as to the Constitution of the United States. So, with that being said, if there were to be legislation passed or an amendment, whatever, man, to allow them to do that, okay, as long as it's legal, I'm on board. But no, I do not think that it's legal for one government agency to force another government agency to provide information about a subject that both of them are looking at. I hope that answers your question.
Well, I'm talking as in, do you know the Silk Road? Like the case, the online black market, drug market that existed many years ago?
No.
Okay, so there was a guy, I'm going to explain this super simply because it's such a huge, long case. There was a 20-year-old kid, I'm going to say 24-year-old, and he runs this website for 4 years where his name is Ross Ulbricht, and he's a libertarian and he believes that all drugs should be legalized. So his response and his solution to that is by making all drugs accessible, right? As an answer to the war on drugs. Now, obviously, this didn't work, but he made this website be accessible via Tor. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The dark web, right? So people could access it anonymously. Now, obviously, he was using all these abilities to obfuscate his network, right? In every way that you can imagine. And there was this question that people said that the NSA could have been surveilling him, right? That it's very possible that the FBI worked with the NSA to obtain records on him to do a better investigation and to figure out who's running the market. And I asked the guy I had on yesterday too, who worked for the FBI, and I've even spoken to the guy who actually caught Ross Ulbricht. I want to have him on the podcast eventually, and he even said yes, but he just wants to do it later. But regardless, the FBI agent I spoke to yesterday, I asked him, I'm like, is it possible that the NSA could have helped in the investigation, right? That through their records that they could have caught Ross Ulbricht, right? And because again, he was caught, right? He was investigated and he was found, and he's serving currently life in prison, which is its own issue in and of itself. But my question would be, is it likely that in a case like that, whether it be drug or, you know, online, the internet is being used in some way, like let's just say some guy is hosting a website where, I don't know, you know, like to the, like whatever horrible thing you could imagine being hosted that's illegal, right? Whether it be somebody selling drugs or other things. I think you can fill in the blanks with that. Could the FBI subpoena the NSA and say, hey, do you have records on the individual running on that site, right? As opposed to subpoenaing somebody else, right? So could they subpoena the NSA for those records, right? Would that work?
No, that's going to have to come from the Department of Justice, and that gets murky whenever people look at DOJ and FBI. They think they're the same. FBI does work under DOJ, but that's going to have to receive an approval from the President of the United States. And I'll give you an example. I was talking to a guy the other day, and and I'm apolitical, man, fiscal conservative, social liberal. That's fine. But I'm talking to a guy the other day, and he's talking about Trump getting rolled up on all these charges. I don't give a shit what charges he's rolled up on. But what I'm focused on that, as far as jurisdictional issues, with what you're talking about, is could FBI subpoena NSA for this material? That's going to be at a level above them. That's going to come from DOJ, and DOJ would have to get approval from the president for that. So my point to that is, think about this. Trump has rolled up on all these charges in Georgia. And I'm not trying to get political. I'm trying to keep it through a lens that uh, uh, the listeners can understand. Why do you think that a state is trying to roll him up on, I don't know, it's almost 100 uh, charges? Why do you think that? And it's not at the federal level.
Um, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, it could just be to, you know, make his life worse, right? Like it could be for any number of reasons.
A president can't pardon themselves from a state charge. It's only a federal charge. So that's why they're trying to do that. So they're trying to do that to roll him up. And honestly, man, I don't give a shit if he gets rolled up or not. But I'm looking at the jurisdictional boundaries associated with the legal authorities, with different agencies, and a president can only pardon a federal crime. They can't pardon a state's crime. So that's why they're going at him so hard in Georgia. So with that being said, it's if you're following me on that, so if he got convicted in Georgia on state crimes, he couldn't pardon himself. With that said, a good attorney could come back and argue the charges are against him interfering with a federal election. So now does it become a federal or state charge? So my point to that is he's going to swim out either way. And honestly, I don't give a shit. My, but looking at it, that's how murky the legal system is in the United States, and how murky it is that different agencies work with each other. That nobody plays nice. It is what it is. They don't play nice with each other. Everybody has the rice bowl mentality, and they want to keep as much as they can internally and avoid oversight to everyone.
Well, okay, so you worked in the CIA while Trump was in office too, which is interesting because I mean, I think the people that I've had on that have worked at the CIA, with one exception, I've only had one other person, it doesn't matter. But a lot of them left a couple of years ago, years and years ago. So you have seen the difference between two. Well, when did you leave in 2021? Did you leave in what month? What month?
It was late 2021. So I started in
Okay.
late '06 and then resigned in late 2021.
Okay. So my point with that question is that you've seen, I believe, three different presidents, if I'm not mistaken. You've seen three different presidents, three different administrations. And, you know, again, I'm very on board with you when it comes to being apolitical. Politics don't really mean anything to me. It, it's garbage. It's garbage in, garbage out a lot of times. But we've seen drastically different presidents, drastically different personalities, but we've also seen now this rise of presidents being looked into on both sides, right? Biden and Trump. And for Trump, it seems like it's been going on for years. And at first it was intelligence related, then it was election related, then now he's getting sued. And now it all seems like everything's coming in at once. Biden, on the other hand, it seems like it's lesser known, but he is, whether it be his kid for gun charges or or what's it called, his business dealings, or any number of things, right, on both sides. Trump's are more public. I haven't researched fully into Biden's, but it's the same idea though. When it comes to intelligence, right, from an intelligence perspective, why is this all of a sudden happening, that all of a sudden presidents on both sides can be, or now just, or in politicians as well, they're just constantly being looked into?
Well, I think it honestly, man. I think it's because of guys like you, and I'm not saying that in a pejorative manner. I'm saying it through the lens of our youth are paying more attention than any youth prior to. You're only 17. Uh, you're paying so much attention to this stuff. My daughter, she's about to start law school. She's paying attention to it, and the amount of information that they absorb is so fast, and some of it's accurate, some of it's not. But whenever somebody presents an argument to me about, well, this president inherited this problem from this president and that's where we're at, I'm like, man, yeah, you know what, you're wrong. I'll tell them that. And I rely on young people like you, my daughter, my son, to provide me that information about what are they hearing from academics, and being able to discriminate from that. So, with that said, when you ask that about why is there so much focus right now on presidents, people in public office? It's the information is so much more readily available. Man, I would have to read the newspaper when I was your age. Now you can just get on YouTube or Google and you can find whatever the hell you want to, and it's going to pop up. Everything's moving in real time right now. So there's no antiquated problem. Well, let me backtrack. There are antiquated problems, social injustice, shit like that. But everything is moving so fast right now that everybody's trying. Imagine a pack of wolves, and there's a piece of meat thrown out there, and half the wolves are Democrats, the other halves are Republicans. They're all hopping in on it to try to take a bite to see who can get the biggest bite. So I think that's why everybody's looking at each other right now. At the end of the day, I don't know what you plan on majoring in college, man, but at the end of the day, everything boils down to economics. It is what it is. And I'm an English major, man. I wasn't an economics major. But if you think about this, when you look at presidents and different political parties pointing at each other and trying to going after each other, and the DOJ is going after Trump, and then they're not going after Biden, son, for the gun charges. And he shot himself in the foot, man, on that one, where he admitted, so he received an other than honorable discharge. And this is not a political commentary. I find this shit fascinating, man. It's a commentary on how our government works. He got rolled up on a gun charge. So, okay, that's cool. But then he admits to, he writes in his book that he was addicted to, I don't know if it was cocaine or crystal or whatever it was. At the same time, he bought the gun. That's an immediate felony. And so he gets rolled up on that, but he's not getting sweated on it. Trump got rolled up on his charges. And uh, if you take a step back and look at that, if anybody would take a step back and look at Trump's rhetoric, yeah, but look at his rhetoric. And whenever he was saying that about we're going to storm them and there'll be hell to pay, all this other shit, whatever he said. But do you not think that that's an incitement of violence?
I mean, yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, I do think that he was definitely trying to get something to happen. Now, I mean, whether or not it was violence, I don't know. I haven't watched the full speech. I'm not going to speak on a subject I haven't, I haven't done my full research. Like, I don't look into it as in depth. I'm just speaking on like the surface level. So I haven't seen the full speech, so I can't say. But, and depending on how he said it too, I don't know. But I do think that if a person were to say, like, we're going to storm, we're going to riot, then yes, it's inciting violence, especially if you're a person in power.
I agree. And that's also the First Amendment. So you have free speech until it comes to yelling fire in a movie theater. So you're causing uh, potential injury and harm to other individuals. Do I think he did that? Yes, but you have to establish intent to charge him on a crime. He has not been arraigned or indicted on an insurrection yet because they can't prove the intent. I think he's half, and I'm not saying this in a pejorative manner. I'm saying this in a literal manner. Retard is the definition of that is to be slow. I think his mouth is running faster than his brain. And so I think that his brain might be slow, is where I'm going at with that. But I think both presidents have flaws and they're pointing at each other and using the mechanisms that are available to them to go after each other. So I think that that's what's happening.
Okay, that's a very interesting observation because I've never heard somebody say that before. However, there's one thing I will disagree with you on. Saying that Trump is slow is a little bit of a fallacy. And I say that because of the fact that Trump, I mean, whether you like him or not, or you think he's legitimate or not, to win president, to become president, to run any type of business and to become a billionaire and to develop massive amounts of wealth more than he already had because he was already born into wealth and to make tremendous, even more amounts of money than that. And then to figure that out, whether legitimate or not, and then on top of that, to become president of the United States and manage that as well, to manage everything and to have it even slightly work out well is a very, very tremendous feat for anybody. So I will say, I think that he, at the very least, has been able to keep himself afloat, which is nothing to scoff at, which is why I do disagree with you on saying that he's slow or unintelligent. He does definitely have a good understanding of a lot of things, right? Whether or not people like to admit that, he definitely understands things at the very least, and he definitely has the ability to manage things, if nothing else. Now, I mean, we can go into debate whether or not he's a good businessman or good politician, good president, whatever. That's a whole nother question. But to do that every single day for however many years of his life is a tremendous amount of thing to manage that stress and to do it over and over and over again and not go crazy or want to give up. So I will say, and also to have some level of success. So I will tentatively disagree with you on that part. However, to your other observation that both of these people are using every mechanism at their disposal, that is not a flawed statement by any means. That is a very true statement because arguably one is using his crowd and his supporters, and the other one is more using the whatever they have. Right, is my point. But tell me what you think.
There is nothing you said that I disagree with. And I don't have a problem being confrontational or pushing back, but nothing you said I disagree with. I look at it through this lens, having been a federal agent, having been in court before, the last thing you want is to have a defendant sit in the stand. You avoid, unless it's unavoidable, your defendant, your client, to get on the stand. Trump had pretty, uh, a very good, and I don't like to put qualifiers on it, but he had a good attorney. And he didn't get on the stand, but she's sitting immediately to his left, and he gave his own closing argument. Number one, that's not a smart move. Number two, whenever you're a defendant, you get to select whether you want to be tried by the judge, a bench trial, or a jury trial. He chose, he literally, man, he chose a bench trial and then went out and uh, completely maligned the judge, the person who is going to make the determination of whether or not he's guilty or innocent in a civil matter, and then what the award is going to be. Why would you want to do that? So that, to me, that reflects overweening pride. It reflects hubris. So to your point about in business dealings and managing the country and businesses and all that, super cool, man. That's awesome. But if you can't manage the legal things, again, when you have an attorney sitting immediately to your left and you don't allow them to give the closing argument, you take over. To me, that's a problem. Now, so that's why I think he's slow when it comes to harnessing his pride, is what I meant by that. He's obviously super intelligent, dude, but that is a problem. The flip side of it is, if you look at what's going on in the right now, everything is moving in real time. The United States, going west to east, we're giving $100 billion to Israel to fight the Palestinians. We're giving 100 million to the Palestinians for aid, under the guise of, yeah, man, we're going to give you guys this money, but you can only use it for humanitarian aid. As soon as that check is cashed, they can do whatever the hell they want to with it. So, so we're funding a war against ourselves, and then, or the United States is, and then Ukraine, which they're corrupt, they're fighting the Russians, which they're corrupt, and we're funding the Ukrainian war at the same time that the Russians are using armaments that were provided to them by China, because China owns Afghanistan. And so they're using our own ballistics and our own armaments. China gave them to Russia, and they're using it to fight the people that we're. So basically, we're funded both sides of a war between Israel and Palestine. We're funding a war between, and we're funding both sides. Fiscally, yes, we're giving money to Ukraine. militarily, we withdrew so quickly from Afghanistan that China they came in over and they came in, took over all of our stuff, gave it to Russia. Russia's using that. And then now Taiwan has a blockade of ships, I'm sorry, China has a blockade of ships around Taiwan. And then we're dealing with this border crisis. We didn't have that under Trump. We do have it under Biden. And and honestly, I don't like the dude, but people will talk, they'll throw shade all day long against Mayorkas. And I, I can't, I don't like the guy because he answers every question as an attorney would, where if you were to ask him a yes or no, he doesn't give it to you. Everything is qualified. And I take issue with that. But he does that. But at the end of the day, he's doing his job. He is limited by the constraints set by the administration on what he can do and what he can't do. So he is being a soldier and following the orders. So both sides are coming at each other. But if you look at the economics associated with it, inflation was lower, interest rates were lower. We weren't having multiple wars on multiple continents. We didn't have a recruitment effort for the United States military as low as we did. Uh, all of this has occurred under Biden. Nobody wants to join the military. Taxes are high, interest rates are high, and we're funding wars that what are we into it for? Uh, Honestly, man, do you give a shit about what's going on in Ukraine?
Well, I was actually wanted to touch on this. So, to some extent, yes, I do. And I think it's important because this is one of the biggest countries in the world. Right, or it is the biggest country in the world, I'm sorry, Russia, right? Going to war against a neighboring country, right? For whatever reason. Now, obviously that's important, right? That's not an unimportant thing. I don't, I granted again, I do not watch the news. I would rather just listen to people I know or a podcast, but I don't watch the news, right? But when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, I do think it's an absolutely important issue, right? I can't sit here and say it's unimportant because sit here and say it's unimportant. It's an extreme. Like it's, all wars are important, right? It's people dying. It's somebody's dying, and whether it be civilians, soldiers, and for what? Whether it be more land or whatever, it doesn't really mean anything. You can never recover those people. I'm always against war on any front, on any side. It's very rare. You should never really be, almost nobody should ever be in support of war. But with that prefaced, I did actually want to touch on this issue. So, Tucker Carlson, I spoke to you a little bit about this. Tucker Carlson went to do an interview with Vladimir Putin. And I don't know, have you seen it?
I've seen snippets of it. So I've seen things that are taken out of context, both positively and negatively towards Tucker. And the same thing with Putin, both positively and negatively. So I can't commentate on the totality of it if I'm only seeing snippets.
Okay. Well, luckily my question was not about the interview. It's more about like the surrounding details of that interview. So the problem is that prior to that interview, the NSA, right? So basic story is, and he's admitted this isn't like a private thing. He's where he goes to lunch one day, or I'm sorry, he gets a text from a friend of his, somebody he knows at the very least, and they basically say, "Hey, would you be willing to come to lunch this Sunday or breakfast?" And then he goes, "Yeah, sure." And he was already going to Washington D.C. that day. As he's in Washington with his friend then says to him, "Hey, so I heard you're going to go interview Vladimir Putin." Tucker was shocked because he had never told anybody. That's not even his wife. And so he's like, "How could you have possibly known that?" And then he goes, "Because the NSA broke into your signal chats," right? They monitored you. They broke into Signal, the secure messenger. Now, then, this was a year ago. This was well before the current interview. So then they monitor him and he's scared off, and the State Department basically shuts him down. And Tucker even called a senator to ask the NSA, if to do an inquiry and to let him know at the very least. And the senator does. They do an inquiry into it. The Congress asks the NSA, were you spying on Tucker? And apparently they were reading his emails, and they admitted to it all. But their response were, okay, well, we had a good reason. Now, the question is, and again, eventually he did get the interview. But on that whole situation, why would you, as the NSA or an intelligence officer, why would you feel the need to prevent someone from getting an interview with Vladimir Putin? What's the benefit there? Or to monitor somebody who's going to get an interview with Vladimir Putin? Is it just because you want to monitor somebody with ties to Putin? Or what are your thoughts on the situation, I guess?
Well, with that one, again, I would look at it through a Title III issue and receiving a warrant from a federal judge to allow you to do that. Here's where that gets dicey. And dude, that's one of the reasons why I got out of government, because everything gets dicey. So let's say that let's say you're Japanese, right? So you're Japanese, and then you reach out to me and you want to have a phone call. You can't get a FISA warrant on me because I'm an American. I'm a U.S. citizen. So you can't do that. So you're not going to be able to get a FISA warrant. But if you see me having communications with someone from China, or not Japan, let's say China, then all of a sudden they can get a FISA warrant on that. So by essence, they can, by proxy, they can listen in to our phone call through that, because I'm talking to the Chinese Communist Party. They can monitor that, and then anything at that point, if a judge grants that warrant, anything at that point, if I was to say, yeah, man, I was out doing crystal meth or whatever, they could roll me up on that. And for the record, I do not do crystal meth, but no, they could pull me up on that. And because of the Title III warrant that they got to listen in on that phone call, FISA is going to get thrown out if somebody from Japan calls me. So if Trump and Tucker Carlson, if or Biden and Tucker Carlson, if they're having that conversation, they could do that because somebody's going to have to talk to somebody to facilitate that interview. It is what it is. And all of a sudden, if you see some Russian phone calls coming into Tucker Carlson, they could do the exact same thing. They'd be like, why the fuck is Tucker Carlson talking to somebody from Russia? And they could take a look at him. So if his buddy reached out to him and was like, hey, I hear you're interviewing Putin. Yeah, they can do that shit. That's why whenever you and I were talking recording, when I said that about, I think Snowden actually did a good thing, that's the approach that I take to it. Whoever I talk to, if I'm not doing anything to harm the United States, it's none of your business. You don't have the right to tap my communication system in order to get something for national security.
Well, okay. So the problem, the one thing, right, is that Snowden, when he leaked those documents, right, he was leaking them because it was not foreign intelligence that was being gathered anymore. It became mass surveillance. So surveillance on every single U.S. citizen, basically. And people will say it was incidental, it was not intentional, or whatever. But people know that's not true, right? It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. That the government, for whatever reason, would want to surveil U.S. citizens. Again, the problem was that it was surveilling U.S. citizens, right? And a lot of times, FISA warrants were not signed, right? They were not being done. Things were kind of being done under the radar to some extent, and there were many taps that the NSA had on already existing companies, for example, like AT&T or underwater wiring, right, for the internet. And they had all these taps around the world. And they probably still do, and it's probably gotten bigger. I mean, after all, these leaks are 10 years old, and that was only 1% of all the documents he had. So, all things considered, what is exactly like there was the ultimatum there, right? Because if Snowden tells us, there is surveillance of citizens, right? And then you get a guy like Tucker Carlson who wants to go interview Vladimir Putin. As a journalist, he has the right to do that. But why, from an intelligence perspective, would they go to stop him in some way? Like, why would that benefit anybody? If anything, it would help gather intelligence, right? Because I feel like it would. I think it would be great. I think it would gather intelligence. What are your thoughts?
When you're dealing with Putin, man, you're not dealing with a source that you can rely on. Number one, he's going to do everything in his own interest, and I don't have a problem with that. That's what everybody does. It's that's just how it works. But I don't know why they would look at Carlson, the United States, the NSA, whoever was taking a look at him. I don't know why they would look at him unless they thought that he, within their exchange, that he would find something that would be detrimental to the Biden campaign. And again, it's one of those statements. If your enemy's doing something to stumble, don't interrupt them. So if I was the Biden campaign, I would let Trump keep running and doing what he's doing and let him screw it up. So we don't need to look at all this. But they are abutting up. No, they're not abutting up. They have already violated the Fourth Amendment. If people are looking at Tucker Carlson's communications, yeah, we got a problem.
Well, I mean, this is according to him. Like, this is everything he said, and this is things that have been confirmed that the NSA was looking at it. But it doesn't seem like, okay, let's just say, for example, you have the people that go and get interviews with Vladimir Zelensky, right? Who I also don't have a problem with, right? I don't have a problem with either of these, like getting interviews with either of these people. I'm sorry. And so the question is, if as an American journalist, there's no problem with getting an interview with the president of Ukraine, right? Which many reporters have done, and I am not opposed to doing either. And even Tucker Carlson himself admitted that he was not opposed to doing. What is the benefit to then only having an issue either in the State Department or otherwise if it's Vladimir Putin? Is it just because it's an enemy country, or what's the problem here?
There are 5 non-frats country that if you are employed by the U.S. government, that you can't have any type of contact with at all. Russia, China, Ukraine, Cuba. Shit, man, I can't think of the other one. I'm looking at my map right now on my wall. But there are 5. So you can't have contact with them. It's just a prohibition. So moving forward, if you, let's say you're flying into Russia, you're going to have to submit a visa application. And so you're immediately going to get flagged by the State Department, and then they will punt that. They can't deny you a visa for that, but they could deny you one to Ukraine or no to Israel right now because of the stuff that's going on there. But so there are some issues to deal with where they'll deny it or not deny it. But the host country, they don't give a shit. So you fly into there. But if you get on the radar that, hey, my name's Tucker Carlson and I host a uh, conservative podcast, and I'm flying to Russia, and so I'm submitting for a visa. You're going to get on the radar. The only thing that I don't understand about that is Putin already came out and said that he wanted Biden to be president. So why are we having? And I know he and Trump like each other, but why are we going to push back on a cat who wants to, a conservative who wants to go conduct an interview with Putin, and we're going to listen into his phone calls? Can you see the constitutional issue that's the Fourth Amendment violation that's associated with that?
Hey, I'm back. Yeah, sorry. Love you. Yeah, no, sorry. I just had to say something to somebody. Repeat the last part.
No, can you not see if they're going to send, if Tucker Carlson wants to go for his own podcast, his own company, he wants to fly to Russia, he's going to have to submit for a visa application. It's going to have to go to the
Right.
Russian embassy, and then it's going to have to be approved. The U.S. can't do anything about that. That's a Russia thing. So Russia approves it. He flies over, and I don't know where the
Right.
interview occurred, but no, they're gonna have to approve it. So
Well,
I'm
yeah.
pretty
The
sure it was
interview to
in
yeah,
Moscow.
okay. Yeah, it was in Moscow. It was in his office. And I it's coming back to me what you said, sorry. Because I have my earbud in, somebody interrupted me. It's okay. Um, but I was gonna say that are you done by the way? I don't want to interrupt you entirely.
No, it's fine, man. But my point of that, to put a bow on that piece, is uh, that does not, in my experience with dealing with constitutional law, being a federal agent, managing a team of federal agents, that does not constitute me even going to a circuit court judge, a federal judge, to ask for a warrant to get a Title III thing. Then it takes it up to the FISA. So you got some other shit to deal with. So Tucker Carlson might be identified as an asset uh, of foreign government, and so then at that point they can apply to him that, yeah, we can look at this guy, if that makes sense to you. If you can translate, once you get into that shit, it's like dealing. It's, yeah, it's swimming in muddy water, man, where you're just, your head's on a swivel. So if Tucker Carlson were to apply for a visa to go to Russia, America is immediately going to look at him and say, this guy's potentially could be a foreign asset. So we have probable cause to get to obtain a FISA warrant to listen in on phone calls. To
Okay.
me, that's the
So
most
yeah.
plausible explanation for that.
Right. So the problem here is also that they were monitoring before I presume he even got a visa. Right. They were monitoring him throughout just when he was in contact with who I would assume to be the individual that could get him the interview with Putin. Who that is, I have no idea. I have no concept of even who that could be. Well, okay, but like it doesn't really matter who it is, right? But let's just say it was somebody in Putin's inner circle, or if it was like, or let's just say it was another journalist that has just ties to the Russian government, because most Russian media is state owned. So I get what you're saying, but the problem here is that the base issue is that the United States not only surveilled a domestic citizen, but also investigated and looked into and surveilled a journalist, right? That is the problem that I have with it. It is a journalist who is just trying to get an interview. And when they monitored his chats and his emails, all that they could find was just that what I would assume is just that he was getting that interview, right? And they've seen his stuff before. They've seen that he's gotten the interview with Trump and all these different people. So why would you have a problem with a journalist who's getting all these different interviews all of a sudden when he wants to get the interview with one of the most powerful people in the world? And another thing too about Tucker Carlson, he also, on Lex Friedman's podcast, I don't know if you're familiar with Lex, but on Lex Friedman's podcast, he did admit, Tucker, that he was also surveilled, not by the NSA, not by U.S. government intelligence, but by South Korea. When he, because Tucker went to North Korea when Kim Jong Un was, it was during a press conference, I guess. Um, I think it was when Trump went to Korea, whatever the case. Tucker all of a sudden noticed that, and I think I'm repeating the story correctly. I was more familiar with the other story, but what I believe happened was he went to North Korea, and all of a sudden he starts noticing that his phone is dying really quickly. And so I believe he got in contact with the NSA, and they basically said, yeah, your phone is being monitored by the South Korean government. Right. Now, why? I don't know. But, and I mean, Tucker now, he doesn't really care as much about being surveilled. But what's concerning here is that South Korea is monitoring, like another intelligence agency, not even just the United States, but they're just monitoring somebody who has even the closest ties to somebody that is considered an enemy, right? Is that problematic to you, or do you think that could also be plausible? Is it just the same reason that you have affiliation with an enemy country, therefore it's reasonable? Because their legal system is completely different. So I don't think FISA courts exist. But what are your thoughts?
Well, it's almost like when I was in the military and I was doing special operations, I was a medic, and uh, they gave you a card that you would hold up, and if shit broke bad, you hold this card up, and then it's pretty much your get out of jail free card. That country, wherever you're at, I don't know if it's Bosnia or wherever it's at, uh, they have to recognize that. Do you think they give a shit if you're in the middle of a gunfight that you stand up and you raise a card up that says, "Hey, man, have protections afforded to me under Geneva Conventions"? Do you think they give a shit about that?
No, no.
No, they don't. And it's the same way with over there when they're if Tucker Carlson's talking to whoever and they talk about FISA warrants and all that shit. That's exclusive to the United States and the jurisdiction allowed by the United States. Nobody gives a shit. They don't. And that's one of the things about NATO. Whenever people are like, we're thinking about letting this country in and we're thinking about not letting this country in, nobody gives a shit. Regarding North Korea and South Korea, and I'm not going to tell you where I've been or where I've not been, but I'm familiar with both. With that said, the United States, they promote the idea that North Korea has all of this ability to create havoc and harm to U.S. soil. North Korea couldn't fight themselves, man. Uh, so, no, I don't get that. The thing that does concern me is that North Korea, if you were to take a step back and look at it geographically, one of the reasons why the United States has been successful in defending itself is geographically. That we are so far away from everybody else that we can protect ourselves. Why do you think that the United States, one of the states, sits on the west coast of Canada, George? Why do you think that?
Not sure. I don't. I wouldn't know. I don't even have an idea why.
It's because it sits 50 miles off the coast of eastern Russia.
So what's the benefit there?
We have 50 miles between, and it's attached to Canada. We sit 50 miles off the coast of there, so we can reach out and touch Russia from 50 miles away. Why do you think Russia controls Cuba? They sit 90 miles off the coast of the United States. That's why that occurs. So geographically, we are in such a such an isolated spot as the United States. We're so isolated from all these other countries. They're all right there next to each other. Again, man, I'm looking at the map right now, and no, they are very close to each other, so they can do whatever the hell they want to do and create a conglomerate. But why all of a sudden does uh, Russia go into Ukraine? Why does China go into Afghanistan? Why does China going into Taiwan? Why does China broker a relationship between uh, Saudi and Iran, which Saudi is Sunni Muslim, Iran is Shia Muslim, and they hate each other, but they broker a relationship. And for me, looking at it, I'm thinking, having been to all these places, I'm thinking about it through the lens of, fuck, dude, our saving hope on this is North Korea because they're so isolated and nobody knows anything about them. After having some experience with them, they don't have shit, man. So, but all of a sudden they pull North Korea in. So North Korea's into this shit now. So you've got Iraq, Afghanistan, uh, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, North Korea, all pulled into this thing. Taiwan's roped into it. What do we got? As far as on the Western Hemisphere, I mean, who do we got to help us out on this thing, man? Because it's going to be a lift. And if you take a look at the map, they own most of the world other than water. They own most of the world. The only other thing we have, man, and I'm not a fan of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the food, but is India, because Pakistan is eventually going to get drawn into this. And Pakistan, they hate the Indians and they border each other. But that's what we're looking at. If all of that makes sense to you, and I wasn't trying to give you a commentary on geography.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. No, I just thought an earthquake because I'm in Jersey, by the way. So an earthquake happened today. I think another one is happening a little bit right now. I'm okay though. I'm fine.
Yeah, I was going to
But
say, you all right, man?
yeah, no, I'm fine. No, because an earthquake literally just hit my like everywhere in Jersey. So yeah, everyone was feeling it. I just heard some shaking. I'm okay, but just letting you know that. But
That's
so
fine.
I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second.
Well, shit, dude, I
But
would too if
yeah,
there was a fucking earthquake. Are you kidding me?
yep. My mom even just texted me that I feel that. Yeah, I did. But yeah.
Hello, how
Hey,
are you?
I'm good. But yeah. Anyways, so back to what I was getting at. This reminds me.
And Deacon Bob's wife.
Okay. Hold on, just give me 1 second.
Yeah, man.
All right. So yeah, back to what I was saying. A few different things going on, but yeah. So another question I had would be relating to this. Edward Snowden, um, allegedly having affiliation with the Russian government, right? Now that he lives there, do you think there's any truth to that?
Says you're gonna have to repeat that, dude. You came in broken up.
Okay. I said that Edward Snowden, um, after he leaked the documents, now he lives in Russia. So do you think that he has affiliation with the Russians, for example?
Well, there was a dude, not to be circuitous with this, but there was a guy that they had who was an asset and he dealt with Russian issues and he flipped. So whatever, man, shit happens, but he flips and he goes to Russia. And this was, I don't know if it was Medvedev or Gorbachev, but anyway, he flips and he goes over there and he's doing his thing. And so the Russians are giving him sanctuary. They're giving him sanctuary, but they are a fan of economics. And his shelf life expired. He gave them everything that he could give them. And then he woke up at the bottom of a stairwell with a broken neck. And this guy was a drunk. And so they were saying that, yeah, he died because he fell down the stairs. With Snowden, he's been, how long has he been over there? Was it 2013?
10 years. I think a little over 10 years. A little over 10 years.
Yeah, so it's like 2013. Evidently, he's given them enough. I don't know. I think they would squeeze you pretty hard. It'd almost be like the Pakistani. They would squeeze you pretty hard to get as much as they could, and then uh, they take pain as an incentive, where the U.S. takes money as an incentive. I think they would have squeezed him pretty hard by now. I think that honestly, man, looking at the shit, I mean, as far as I know, nobody died because of what Snowden said or what he put out. Were there platforms and methods compromised? Of course there were. Did people die? I don't think so. But I don't know. I didn't have his case. But I would think that they're keeping him there because he's a valuable asset. And supposedly the guy's super dope on computers and working on that shit and coding and trying to find a way to circumvent and be surreptitious on how you can access systems. So he is a utility. And what is the cost benefit associated with that? Do we want to keep him or do we want to kill him? And I think that's where they're at. Well, I mean, the easy lift. Think about this: if they had some heavy shit, or no, if he had nothing left to give them, they would have extradited him to the United States. 1,000,000%, dude. They would have kicked him back over here, and then he's going to be in a federal court, and he's going to roll up on espionage charges and all that stuff. But that wouldn't stick because they can't establish intent. What he was doing is adhering to the Constitution, which is the oath that he took. So he's going to be fine either way, man.
All right. Yeah, that's so when it comes to okay, are you familiar with Signal Messenger?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So this is again related to a conversation I had yesterday and also the conversation we're having now. Snowden recommended Signal, right, to everybody on Twitter. He's like, I use it all the time and it's good. Now, when it comes to secure messaging, obviously if the government wants to get information, they will, especially technologically speaking. The question is, when it comes to using Signal, do you think that the app is secure, or what are your thoughts on it? At least now, right now that it's been promoted by Elon Musk and Edward Snowden, and it's been seen as like this super secure thing, but it's very popular though. So, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on that, or I don't care. That
What do you
I
mean?
don't. No, I don't care. I don't give a shit. It can be secure. It can be not secure. Uh, I don't. I don't care about it. It's. I've got it on my phone 100%, but it's the best example I can give you is I was out on a trip one time for work, and we had some shit go down. And so we had some shit go down, and I had a phone called an Iridium and a Sectera, and I'm trying to get comms with that. And then I had a phone that was attached it was a direct line to the White House. That wasn't working either. The Iridium and Secretary, they weren't working. The fucking the White House phone, I can't even remember what that comm system was called, but it wasn't working. The man I was protecting, his phone wasn't working. The buddy sitting next to me, his business and personal cell wasn't working. My business wasn't working. My business phone wasn't working, but my personal cell was. It was getting signal, and I was like, "Sir, you got a phone call coming in." And I handed the phone back, and so we did something called a nomination. And so anyway, somebody woke up dead over that one, but um, it was we had 8, 2, 4, 6, 8. We had a shit ton of comms that they just weren't working. But when shit's moving in real time like that, do you think I gave a Vegas fuck if somebody was listening in on this? I didn't give a shit. And so no, we made the call and did our job. And dude, that is the only iPhone. When I go in to trade in an iPhone, that's the only one I'm not trading in just because of that. Uh, that one operation that went down. But if it comes to Signal or WhatsApp or I don't care what it is, whatever comms method it is, if they want to touch you, they can touch you. They'll reach out to you. But if shit's moving in real time and you've got some business to take care of, whatever comms you can establish, whether or not it's compromised or not, you establish that comms.
Right. So now, hmm, so now my question would also be, and this is unrelated to surveillance. Now, are you okay with talking about the directors, right, of different agencies?
Uh, And if we get into the realm of classified, we can abut up to that, and I know how to navigate that. But if you're asking me about somebody that I don't know about, I can't speak to it, dude.
Okay. Well, I was just asking if you could describe the traits of, because you've also been amongst different directors too, and you've gotten to meet them, talk to them, as well as, you have you not only personally experienced it, but you've also experienced the change, the different directors. Now, when it comes to, a CIA director, it's very different from the director of the FBI. The director of the FBI is usually a known person. He's like a lawyer, maybe even a senator. He's been working in public law. Director of the CIA, for example, or national intelligence even, is very different. They're usually somewhere high up in the CIA or intelligence, right? It's different, or they've already worked as a director. So when it comes to the personalities of those people, is there any common traits that you've seen?
The only thing I can say is it goes one of two ways, either focus or lack of focus. That's it. There is no gray area.
What do you mean, focus or lack of focus?
Some people are in at every morning at 6 a.m. and they're so focused, and then you're taking them home at uh, midnight. Some people show up and they're like, "Hey, man, where are plane tickets? We got the ski trip scheduled." And it is what it is. Your job is not to question their schedule. Your job is to protect them. So I've had to go both ways. So some of them care, and some of them it's just a job. They don't give a shit. Some of them are singularly focused on national security, and others are like, no, man, I'm going to do this thing for 2, 3 years, and then I'm going to dip.
Well, when it comes to okay, so a part of my question is also that the director of the CIA is usually very mysterious. I don't want to say mysterious because that sounds very pretentious and edgy, but secretive, right? Like usually you don't know too much about them. We know a lot about directors of almost every other agency, right? They're pretty public people. But when you come to the director of the CIA, right, or the individuals that kind of run it, they are known, but they're also kind of vague, right? They're kind of random in a way. You don't know like everything about them like you do maybe Mayorkas, for example. Where we kind of know who he is, we know his background. You know, CIA director, it's like you kind of know who he is, but his name is never brought up, right? Maybe once in a while, here and there, but it's very rare. Um, but what are your like when it comes to your experiences meeting them? Or if you can share, if you are okay with that, what was it like, right? How, if you can name names and say like who they like, what they were like, right? Talking to them, interacting with them.
I've got I have photos in my house of my wife and children and me. As soon as you walk in, the first thing you'll see is me and one of the directors. And honestly, he was a favorite guy that I covered. And I'm not going to say a name. And the only reason why I'm not doing that is it will give the time frame. Well, no, you know what? Fuck it, man. I'll just say it because I already said I was there from '06 to 015 to 2015 or 21. I'm sorry, 15 years. Uh, Panetta was probably the favorite. Reyes, then I would say Hayden, and then we had this guy who was a deputy DNI. His name was Dompert, and this guy was such a pain in the ass to deal with, and he always wanted to go skiing, and so we'd go skiing with this guy. And dude, I'm a East Coast blue level skier, but he wanted to go hardcore and go double black diamond. And I'm like, son of a bitch, because you got to cover the dude. And so you would have to do that. So, no, he was a pain in the ass. But at the end of the day, they were all super cool, but there was no political divide between how they operated. It was all, I can say this unequivocally, they all operated under the pleasure of the president of the United States. They all did their jobs. There's one guy, I'm not going to mention his name. I just found a letter down in my basement the other day that he wrote me that I covered for multiple years. He was deputy director and phenomenal dude. And I cannot say a bad thing about any of them other than the pain in the ass that made me go down that double black diamond because I had to protect him. But no, they were all cool, but they were all operating under the pleasure of the president. That was it. And so, no, they were doing their job, and all of them were super smart, man. Um, so no, I don't have anything. If you were to ask me what differentiates them, I can't put a finger on it, other than that they all had an allegiance to the Constitution. Other than that, no, I can't say anything negative about any of them. And trust me, dude, I think you can tell that through our conversations. If I was going to throw shade somebody's way, I would throw it. But no, they were all good dudes, man.
All right, yeah, and well, because again, the reason I'm asking is just because most people never hear them, right? Most people never hear them speak. It's not like again, Mayorkas, for example, who you hear so much about, and there's inquiries, and there's this, and there's that. Whereas the CIA director seems like a very secretive person, comparatively, right? Like you don't hear him, usually you don't see him in media appearances too often, if at all. They keep to themselves a lot. Now, whether that's personal decision or otherwise, I don't know. But I mean, that was somebody just yeah. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on, I guess, that aspect of them, like the secretiveness, right? If you can speak to that at all. I mean, you've been alongside them. So
No, I think it's you got to understand to do that job, you have to possess a level of discretion. And everyone that I've worked with, again, I can't say a bad thing about them. They are discreet and they don't want to be out there. The only thing that I find to be an anomaly is, have you ever heard of somebody going from the CA to USAD?
USAD?
Yeah.
No,
How about CA to Peace Corps?
absolutely not. And I know why for that, because they're basically, they don't interact with each other, or they're not supposed to.
It just doesn't happen, man. And so if you were to take a look at that, I don't understand currently, and I left there before this guy got put in place, but the current director, he was a career diplomat. He was an ambassador, Burns. So he went from State Department to CA. I, I don't understand that. If there's a prohibition placed upon people from USAID or Peace Corps going to CA and vice versa. So it's, and then they have the same thing going on between, you'll have people all the time come from CA to State Department to CA. But at that level, at a cabinet level position, how do they get confirmed? Because your job, you have something called the third option. So the first option, if you're at the White House and the president asks, he's going to bring three people in every time. It's going to be the Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Director of CA. He'll ask Secretary of State, "Can we solve this problem?" And if he or she says, "Not through diplomacy," they immediately go to the Secretary of Defense and asked he or she if they can solve the problem. And if they can't, they'll say no. When he looks over at CA, he doesn't ask if they can solve the problem. He just tells them to solve the problem. And so you gotta fucking figure out a way to do it. And that's where the title, I think it's 49, some title comes in where it's pretty much, it's not pretty much. Like I said, I don't like using qualifiers, but no, the fucking gloves are off, dude. And so you go in and you get it done. So with the guy in there right now, I don't see how they're able to do that. But through the lens of he's established relationships as a former ambassador with other foreign nations, he's already established relationships where, how am I going to go into whatever arbitrary country it is where we were cool with each other and now I'm going to subvert your government? That's the exact opposite of diplomacy.
Right. Do you at all talk to any of these people still, or was it just in the agency? And if you don't want to share that, you don't have to.
I do, but I'm not going to share who that is.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you what I told you before the interview. I'm just going to say okay, and I'm going to respectfully move on. So now you did talk about Burns, William Burns. He actually had a meet, and this is I'm going to ask you like 3 more questions. Then I'm going to shut off the recording. Then we'll talk a little bit after the show. But with Burns, he actually did meet, or Bill Burns, right? The current director of the CIA. He actually did meet with Prigozhin, who is the head of Wagner Group, which was the biggest private military in Russia, and he was basically Putin's right hand man. And during the coup or beforehand that Prigozhin tried to do, director of the CIA did meet up with him. And there's a lot of people that say that there was U.S. affiliation. Now, I don't know if you can even remotely share with any of that, like what your thoughts are on that situation, but I will ask you, what do you think?
The so to that specific meeting, I have no knowledge of it, none whatsoever. I will say this regarding the relationship with the United States government and foreign entities who are doing things. I think it was 2014, maybe. It was sometime in there. When do you know who Kofor Black is?
No, I'm not aware. No.
All right, so Kofor Black, he was the director of CIA's CTC after 9/11 happened. And he told Gary Schroen, Billy Wall, and Gary Burnson, they were leading up a team of dudes to go into Afghanistan. And he's like, I want bin Laden's head on a stick. Uh, Obviously, they didn't happen. But so, no, he's going over there doing that. And then the military industrial complex exploded and Blackwater started. And Eric Prince already had a business going on. And so he's doing his thing. So he gets into it. And so he's doing his thing. He's funneling people overseas all day long. And CA's buying into it. So they started using Blackwater, which it ended up becoming, uh, what was it? SOC, SOC. So got, it fell under the umbrella of SOC. And then Eric Prince, you know who he is, right?
Yeah, I actually have spoken to him. I tried getting him on the show. He left me on red, but that's a story for a different time. But yes, I am aware who he is. Former CEO of Blackwater. Now he's CEO of something else that begins with an A. But yes, I do know who he is. He also has his own phone company too.
Yeah, he's not a good dude. He's a great dude, man. But Prince, so no, he's a great dude, man. So he is doing that, and then he got rolled up on some shit, and then he moved to Abu Dhabi, and he had a lot of stuff going on, man. His dad died of cancer, his wife died, and so he rolled, and so CIA had to look for another viable option. And that's just one of the ways they roll. And so they look at the most viable option fiscally, who can do the problem or can solve a problem, and also avoid liability for them. And I think that's I'm answering your question about what they have butted up against as far as CA when they're doing that. So this other company that you're talking about, I think it's the same thing, man. It's somebody who's looped in, but they want to avoid a footprint.
Right. So actually, I have a question about Eric. Have you met Eric by any chance?
Yeah, I was up there it was before I went to CA. I was up there in 03, 04 time frame, and I got the chance to meet him. A nice guy, man. And the thing that I liked about him is number one, anytime you meet a team guy, they usually they want to. Most of them are cool, but if they're a punk, they will try to do the dick measuring thing. He wasn't that at all, man. He was super cool, and that's fine. But the facilities that he had set up were so professional and so it was streamlined, dude. So no, my experience with Eric is limited, but it has always been nothing other than positive.
That's good to hear. I remember he was on Sean Ryan's show about a year ago now, and I myself would like to interview him. I would like to talk to him. But
Well, I think he
yeah,
would be I think he would be down for it, but he there was Gary Jackson and Jim Sawerski that were working with him. And do you know Eric's story?
Not at all. Not at all. No.
Yeah, dude. So he grew up in Michigan, and his dad was a he developed a company to put the lights in your visor uh, in your car. And so his dad got a patent on it, and and Eric was a SEAL, and he I think he was either Team 4 or Team 8, but so he's doing that. Annapolis grad, and so he's doing that, or I think it was Annapolis, but he's doing that, and his dad died, and he and his sister split the company, and so he walked away with like $1.5 billion, and so he bought all this land, and so he got that shit, and so he just started a range where they could shoot uh, high ballistic missiles. And it's pre 9/11 for dudes or not high ballistic missiles, high ballistic guns. So they're out there and they're lobbing these things, and then 9/11 kicks off. And then now everybody's wanting to go to this range. And then his wife dies. And I'm like, what the hell? So he's raising 2 kids on his own. His wife's dead. His dad's dead. What's he going to do? And so he started Blackwater. And so he did that. And turns out it worked good for him. But then they had the shootout in Iraq, and he got rolled up, and he was facing some kind of charges, but he dipped out and went to uh, Dubai. So he went there, and as far as I know, that's where he still is. But no, he's not a good dude, man. He's a great dude.
Right. And again, yeah, I mean, I would definitely like to speak to him because I mean, the only contact I've had with him is two messages that both got left read, right, and that was it. And I don't know why that is. I mean, I've heard from Sean Ryan, not personally, but on his show that, or on Julian Dory's show, Julian is a friend of mine, but Eric Prince is he avoids the media like the plague, so and he probably gets invited on a lot. So, you know, maybe that was why. I don't know. I'll have to talk to him again. But yeah, I mean that would be definitely an awesome interview.
Well, we can talk. Have you thought about getting Sean Ryan on?
Yes, definitely. I'm I yes, I have. I'll say that.
All right, we'll talk about that on the back end of this offline.
Sounds
He's
good.
he's a good dude, man. He's a really good dude.
I know, and I can tell. Sean Ryan seems overall like Sean Ryan you're referring to, or Eric,
Yeah.
because both of them seem like good guys. But Sean Ryan, yes, I have heard good things about him. Very deep thinker. I will say that he's a very, you know, he's very open, which is also kind of weird to see for somebody who used to work for the CIA. I mean, with your exception, I'm saying, but like he's talking about his personal life too, and he talks about, how various things, and he's just very open, and I like the guy. I'm a big fan of his show. But
Dude,
that's
I'll
two
tell you what.
questions. Yeah.
I'll tell you what about him, man. I was at a bar one night with him, and I didn't know him, man. And some nerd walked up. Who was a CIA guy? And he walked up, and he's trying to have a conversation with Sean. And Sean just wasn't interested. And he's not a big dude, man. He's 5'7" and weighs maybe a buck 60 soaking wet. And the dude, uh, the blindsided him. 100% blindsided him, and it would have probably broken my whole face. But Sean just turned his head and he turned around and looked at the guy, and I was like, "Oh, we got a problem now. Sean's going to kill this guy." And Sean looked at him and said, "Is that all you got?" Uh, Dude, he is hard, man. He is a hard dude, but a great dude. So no, man. If you, I'll reach out to him and see if we can get him on there.
We'll talk after the show about that. All right.
All right.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, my only last two questions would be: do you have any advice for young people? That'd be my first question.
As far as in general, or
Just in general, do you have any advice to young people?
no, just stay hard, man. That's it. I know.
Hello? I lost. Hello? Hello? Hey, I didn't hear you. Hey, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you cut out. You cut out. Sorry. Yeah.
I was putting my
Um,
phone up to my chest. No, the only thing I would say is just stay hard, man. It's like I got a son. Uh, Luke is uh, he's 12, and I just got him into football a year ago, and he's like, "Hey, man, I, I don't like what I'm playing. I want to play football." And I was like, "Okay, we can play football." I'm sitting at home, and we're hanging out, and he started. We're throwing about 1,000 balls a week, and running, and he his coach uh, was like, "Hey, man, our quarterback got injured. Uh, can he play quarterback?" And I was like, "Yeah." And dude, last night, I shit you not, man, he scored 10 touchdowns, 2 on kickoff return, uh, 5 rushing, and 2 passing. And I'm like, dude, just stay hard, man. I don't want to sound like David Goggins when he's like, the world needs 3 things: doctors,
right.
lawyer, and hard motherfuckers. But no, just stay hard to get out there and fucking kick ass. And so for youth, and I know that's probably not something that's going to be consumable by your audience, but no, just keep doing your thing, man. And there's a huge difference between what is right and what is wrong, and what is good and what is bad. Right and wrong is it completely is a social construct. Good and bad is not. Organically, we know what is good and bad. So just do the good thing. Don't do the right thing, man. Do the good thing, and that would be my only advice for youth: is just do the good thing. And the thing about it is, as soon as you come out of the womb, you start dying. It is what it is. But also, as soon as you come out of the womb, you know what's right and wrong. So just do the right. You know what's good and bad. Do the good thing. Is my only advice I'd give to youth.
This is a follow-up question that do you believe in God? You don't have to answer that question, but do you?
Do I believe in God? As far as God, the Father of Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how much I believe in that. How much I believe in Him. So 100%. I don't have tattoos reflecting God for a social status. I have it because I believe in it, man. So yeah, dude, I read the Bible every day. Uh, so yeah, God is. Think about it. If you were to do the math on this, do you think Jesus was a happy guy or an angry guy?
A happy guy for the most part.
All right. You disagreed with me, so I'm not trying to do tit for tat, but no, I don't think he was. He was an angry dude. When he rode into the temple and he saw the merchants trading and he's flipping tables over, he was pretty pissed off. He's like, I'm coming down here to save you dipshits for eternal perishing. That's what I'm here for. And you numbnuts are doing this shit? Seriously? And when he's on the cross and he's suffering what he's suffering through, do you know what his biggest suffering was?
The sins of mankind.
No, not at all, man. His and I can say this. I'm not trying to say this in a pejorative manner or to try to diminish your uh, uh, absolution of how you view uh, the Bible and how God is. No, man, he was taken away from perfection. And having minored in English uh, and looking at it, nobody knows how long. People say Jesus was 33 years old. Uh, we don't know. It was somewhere between 28 and 33. So we don't know. But his most suffering, even when he was on the cross, getting spikes staked into his wrists and into the tops of his feet, that was not a heavy lift from him at all. Jesus was hard, man. The heavy lift was being away from perfection when he got taken away from his father, who was God. That was his lift, dude. That was a thing that sucked for him. It wasn't dying for you. It wasn't dying for me. It wasn't having a crown of thorns put on his head. It wasn't about him getting cutting the liver, and it wasn't about or cutting the side, and it wasn't about any of that. Going from head to toe with the crown, the wrist, the spear in the side to his feet. It was about being away from his father, who was the ultimate goodness. Jesus didn't give a shit about what was right or wrong. He cared about what was good and bad. He's like, do I gotta come down here and die for these dipshits and be away from perfection for this amount of time? But with that being said, I think he held on to with God, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. So I'm going to swim through this, but man, I just want to go back home to be with Dad. Is that fair? No, let me
Yeah.
backtrack. I don't care if you think that's fair. That's my view on
Right. Well, I am a Christian, so I mean, I do have minor disagreements, but I do think that overall what you said is absolutely true. Right.
it.
I am 100% a follower of Christ. Now, the last thing I want to ask you is, what do you think? How do you think? Okay. How do you find purpose in life? How does a person find purpose in life? That's my last question.
You're 17, so you don't have kids.
That is true. But what? Yeah.
My purpose is professionally, I've already done everything that I want to do. Jumped out of planes, dove, and gunfights and explosions, all that shit. Cool story, bro. Nobody cares. My thing is about the legacy. Whenever I have a daughter who is 19 years old, who has got straight A's in college and is about to embark on a law degree, that's you don't know once you raise kids if you did a good job or not. When I got a son who is the captain of his football team and starting quarterback, and he's thrown 19 touchdowns this far, or he's scored 19, some rushing, some punt returns, some uh, passes in 4 games. And he's an honor roll student. That's what I care about. All this other shit, no, I don't care about that shit. You can do the sexy stuff all day long and go out and do your Jason Bourne thing and all that stuff. No, what I care about is them, my legacy. For them to carry on that legacy. That's my thing, man.
All right. I think that's a great place to end off. Now, any closing words? I'm going to stop recording. We'll talk after the show.
No, brother. Just I'll pray for you. Pray for me.
That's completely fair. All right. It's good
All right,
talking.
brother. Yep.